All right, if everyone's ready, we can get started. Call to order. Attendance will be noted. And that moves us on to Section 2, Policies on the Review Cycle. Dr. Russell?
Thank you, Ms. White. We're going to dive right in. And I'm going to ask Mr. Moran to take us back to some of the policy discussion we had in May. We did reach out to our solicitor on the 4 policies that appear first in the chart. So we'll update you. We'll bring everybody sort of up to speed, if you will, with some of the conversation in May and where we've landed now and what administration is recommending to the committee, or for at least conversation among committee members. So Ryan, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Russell. So the first policy we're going to take a look at is policy 319, outside activities. If you recall, this policy, the committee had raised some questions regarding its application to teachers who offer services such as SAT preparation, tutoring, or private coaching, and things like. After further discussion and also reviewing this policy with our school solicitor, the administration recommends against teachers promoting their services or soliciting business for a service that they provide or outside activity. In the notes, you can see that we did receive clarification regarding the definition of solicitation and promote. That was a question that was brought up from the committee. But after that further discussion, we are recommending no additional changes beyond those that were recommended in the previous meeting.
Is there any comment or further question?
Yeah, I have questions about, we have teachers that tutor on the side.
Correct.
So it says, they should not use school material for personal gain, copyright materials, I get that. They can't use the school property or school time to solicit or accept customers for private enterprise. So, if a graduate, someone posts on our PV parents page looking for English tutor help for SAT, what have you, or whatever, and somebody goes, yeah, I know teacher X does some tutoring on the side, sends the kid in to talk to teacher X, they're not able to have a conversation with them. It says employees should not use school property or school time to solicit or accept customers for private enterprise. That would prevent them from having a conversation about, yeah, I'd gladly help you on the side on whatever you're looking for tutoring for. And that, by the way, happens now a lot.
So I think we should talk more about that, because I think the spirit on the part of at least myself as a principal was that teachers should not actively or overtly promote, hey, I am a tutor, I can offer you services. Instead, our counselors keep a list of those interested and willing to provide tutoring services. So if a parent contacts a school, they speak to the counselor, and the counselor can say, yes, Mr. Saylor provides tutoring, Dr. Weston provides tutoring, Mrs. Russell, no, she doesn't provide tutoring, but these are the individuals that do. So how do we delineate the spirit of what's intended from promoting or soliciting services? That's a question for the committee. Right now, we don't view it as an issue. We don't have the data to support that. You're indicating it does happen. That's a concern. We need the data, we need the examples so that we can follow up and address it.
If the student approaches the teacher and says, I need a tutor, I understand you provide tutoring services, the teacher is not soliciting the student's custom. The student is asking the teacher if they provide that service. And if the teacher responds, yes, I provide that service, let's talk about this.
That's my concern, because it says or accept customers. You're correct, Dr. Weston. They're not soliciting, but it says or accept customers for private enterprise. And in that instance, if I go to you and say, Dr. Weston, I understand, my mom told me that you tutored a couple kids a couple years ago, and I need some help in biology. Are you still tutoring? And you respond to me, I am still tutoring. Let me give you some information. You're now accepting a customer for private enterprise.
What if the teacher simply stated that I'd be more than willing to talk to you about that, however, we would need to do it off school time? I mean, they're not accepting at that moment a customer, but they're confirming that they're willing to talk about it.
I'm okay with them accepting the customer at that time, I'm okay with what you just said. I would have other concerns in other policies because
This
now the
does it.
teacher is exchanging phone numbers with the minor. I just don't know, did something happen that we need this policy updated like that? I am telling you, it is we do have teachers at PV that tutor, and they do really great work. If I'm not a teacher, as everyone knows, but if I see this policy pass, that side hustle is not worth my real hustle. And so now I'm going to be very nervous, and I see people in the administration nodding their head. I'm going to be very nervous trying to help a student out in my side hustle that I might get my hand slapped, and I don't want to see that happen.
So, Mr. Saylor, do you have a suggestion? I was thinking as you were talking, we eliminate or accept. We strike that from the statement. Do you have a different idea about how we might capture what it is that we know is the intention and we want to support our students having access to?
Couldn't we just scratch 2 and 3 and the employee should not utilize, they can't use, I mean, the first part, we don't want a teacher using the PVSD emblem on their tutoring stuff. I get that.
No,
That makes sense.
no.
We don't want them literally handing out, like PowerPoint slides to the students about a side hustle. I get that. But I would strike 2 and 3 and be very happy with, with the rest of it. I just don't want to, I don't want to see a teacher or a staff member or a coach get themselves in trouble for a policy that might not be intended to prevent what it is going to prevent if it passed with this vernacular.
Yeah, and I do think the intent, especially of number 2, is to prevent a conflict of interest. So I do have concern if we have employees soliciting customers for their own gain, whether that's a private enterprise. So even in tutoring, in cases of tutoring, I would recommend that individuals don't tutor their current students for the reason of there could be a conflict of interest. That
Yeah.
doesn't say that here. However, I would have concern for individuals soliciting for personal gain.
You bring up a good point that I hadn't thought about with the conflict of interest aspect, because, if a teacher outside of school hours is coaching a current student or helping with SAT prep, they may look at them differently in class as well. And the students may get the idea that the way to get an A in so-and-so's class is to take his SAT prep. That's a tricky area. That's a tricky area, and I think we need to think about that. The potential for conflict of interest, or the appearance of conflict of interest, is great.
Maybe Mr. Clellan, I don't know if you could speak to your knowledge about interactions. I don't really feel comfortable with exchanging of phone numbers. I would assume that wouldn't happen. I would think that the teacher would then go to the parents via email to have further conversation. I don't know why a teacher would ever hand their phone number to a student. I don't understand in what instance that would ever happen. So I don't know if the language, I had teachers in my high school that were my tutors, that I was taking their class at the time of tutoring with them. And I guess I could be seen as a conflict of interest. I was beyond help, but yeah, some people are productive with it. I think maybe language, maybe in an AR format, I would assume that maybe teachers also want guidance on this, and maybe that's a good way forward to be able to provide some guidance to staff.
No,
Well,
I'm-
like
yeah, I'm
the
looking
current
over it.
policy has no guidelines. It's just the policy.
I understand that.
It just stops.
But I'm saying, above and beyond the policy,
Yeah.
policy, we're reading it through an interpretive lens, right? The way you're reading it is a little different than the way I'm reading it, and then we have the conversation about conflict of interest. So what I'm saying is, if the ultimate goal of any policy, is to uphold a certain standard. Faculty wants guidelines.
Could we have could we say that employees need to follow a certain procedure to get their name out there for whatever it is they're coaching or offering? I mean, if we already have a list of tutors, we already have a list of private music instructors that the counseling center can hand out. I don't see why a teacher can't hand that out as well, and there must be some sort of process to get your name on that list. I don't know how it works because I don't know how this can work for other things like coaching. I mean, there must be private coaching. People must work at coaching centers for sports that they would want if their kids approach them. So I guess, can we have like an AR that's the process for being able to hand your paper out to somebody? And then instead of striking two, maybe we say employees need to follow a procedure to get their name out there. I don't know. I didn't prepare any of that. I'm just riffing on what's here. And
No.
you know what? Can I ask another question? Are co-curriculars and like union work, is that considered outside activity? It's like we can work on.
Well, co-curriculars are paid through the district, so I would
so
assume
it's
that
not
this would be
outside.
like I Venmo'd you because you gave me an hour of your time for calculus tutoring. That's the way I read this, not
Okay,
for a
that's
co-curricular.
we're not talking about sports teams
You're talking about punch number 3.
in terms of who decides what's a valid reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to make a coach might set a lineup for today, some on their plan period.
Yeah, but that would be in the instance like a coach says to HR, I didn't grade any of those tests that were due because I was doing the lineup.
That would be a problem.
That would be a problem regardless of a policy. Correct. You have to do A before you do B. But are you concerned that other like union activities that punch number 3 could hamper that?
Yeah, I guess so, because some things you need to respond to some emails or something like that. I don't want to completely rule it out that it can't happen during school time.
Yeah, I could see that would be concerning to me as well. Employees should not use school time for outside activities.
And I'm not certain that we would categorize union activities and such as coaching as well as outside activities. I think that
No.
we would have to have further discussion about that, but I was not coming to the impression that was included in outside activities.
I mean, I think there's 3 categories that that we're starting to see here. One would be your assigned duties as a teacher, for example. The planning, the delivering, and the assessing of instruction that you are responsible for, and your planning time is dedicated to that purpose. If you are employed by the district as a co-curricular something or other, that's sort of an outside activity, but you're employed by the district. So you fall under a different set of rules, so to speak, from being able to use planning time to figure out your lineup for the game this afternoon. At the same time, if I'm tutoring on the side, that's truly an outside activity. I'm being paid not from the district, by the district, but by potential clients. So, I mean, for years, the district has discouraged teachers from promoting and soliciting services like tutoring. That's just an easy go-to. And the way that we worked with teachers to be able to provide some level of service to students was their name goes on a list with the counselors. If parents have questions, they contact the counselors. They do not necessarily advocate directly to a teacher for their child, nor does a child advocate directly to a teacher for themselves. It goes through the counseling center. For years, that's been the practice in the district. And I see Mrs. Venza shaking her head as a building principal. I don't know if there are egregious violations of that practice, though. I don't have the data that help me to know that, and whether or not we need to change the guidelines so that individuals are clear about the expectations. Again, the committee has to talk about how do you want to delineate some of this a little further if necessary.
Thank you. I've seen examples of parents ask for, if a teacher in a meeting, do you tutor? And they say, like, talk to me next year. I don't tutor my own students. So I think that there is a level of that taking place. Not that there's a rule about it, but I think that people kind of just do that anyway.
And I think there's a big differential between that conversation and then next year they reach out, and that's private connection, that's private enterprise. When you ask all the teachers and all the staff members to put themselves on a list, then the school is by in part recommending these teachers without knowing if these services are good or not. And then then you have to worry about what type of indemnification does that give to the district. You know, Mr. Clellan, he's a tutor for English, as an example, right? We don't know if he's good or not. I just know that Cheryl told me, 3 years ago he was a great tutor, so now I want Ethan to have him tutor Ethan, and it's great. But I have a bad experience. Well, I just go back to Cheryl and say, you know what, I had actually bad experience. Great teacher, but just a bad experience. But if it's on a list that the school gave me, now I go back to the school and say, this was no good. There's a danger to that. That's why sometimes that private connection or that point of view that comes from somebody else. That's kind of how it happens. Someone states, I'm looking for this, and they say, this is who we use, and it was a great experience. If it comes from a list that the school provides, and I know they do provide other services, but if it comes from a school list, now the school's really, they're vouching for that session, that it's going to be impactful and worthwhile. And then you might have, well, he charges $20 an hour, he charges $37 an hour, and there's no, rhyme or reason for anything.
I believe the intent of the list is to provide families with options. Like, here are individuals that provide or are willing to provide services. I would have to check the list to see, is there a disclaimer? Because I think perhaps that's something maybe that needs to be added, that these do not indicate a recommendation. However, these are just individuals that offer services.
Yeah.
Perhaps that's something that we could look at, whether or not a disclaimer should be added to that. Because I would absolutely not want to promote individuals on that list. However, provide our families with the availability of services.
Correct. And if I'm a teacher, I want to know the rally point on the list. Why am I 9th? Why is so-and-so 5th? Because then the person who's ranked 5th probably gets more calls than the person that's ranked 9th. Yeah. A lot of issues that come with the list that's given out from the district.
A non-numbered list.
Well, everything's numbered unless everything goes,
Bulleted.
Yeah.
Guess, what did the policy say before? Because the guidelines were added, right?
Yeah, the guidelines were added. It just stopped at
It did not have
delegation of
guidelines.
responsibility.
So the guidelines were intended to provide some more specific examples as to what is permissible and what is not.
Okay. But when we didn't have the guidelines, we didn't have any problems?
And the reason for the guidelines is not to say that we were aware of any issues or concerns. Right. Again, it was more to make it clear as to, because usually we're asked, well, what does this mean? Like, what are some instances where this could happen, or what are some things that we should not do? So the guidelines, again, were to try and make that a little bit clearer.
Dr. Russell, remember, sometimes we say policy is purposely vague, and I always say, well, it shouldn't be.
Yes.
In this instance, it should be vague.
Okay. You're coming over.
Yeah. It only took 3 years and 7 months. It should be vague.
So do we want to strike the guidelines?
Is that the consensus of the committee to strike the guidelines? Dr. Weston?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan? Okay, I'm fine with that.
Okay, are we good to move forward with 320?
Please, thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Warren.
great. So 320, freedom of speech in non-instructional settings. This too was a policy that the committee had asked for further clarification and also a review of our solicitor. In doing so, there were a couple points, as you see in the notes. One of them being, should the level or severity of disruption be considered? In further review and talking to our solicitor, we indicate that yes, it should. However, that any decision based on the above list shall take into consideration all the facts of each individual situation and shall include consultation with the school solicitor. And that is a practice that is in place now. When we have concerns or items that may be of concern that are brought to our attention, we do consult with our school solicitor. The second area was, who determines whether a disruption has occurred. And we added clarification that the superintendent would be expected to weigh in on whether a disruption has occurred or is reasonably likely to occur. So you see a proposed revision to the statement, and that statement is in quotes. The next item that we were asked to look at was, could this language infringe on employees' constitutional rights? In consulting with our solicitor, stated that PSBA's proposed language was intended to avoid any infringement upon constitutional rights. However, after further consultation, we are recommending just maintaining the current policy language with minimal revisions. So you see down below, the administration is recommending the current policy language be retained with minimal revisions, and you can see that there's an additional draft.
Why did you X out including dismissal?
Because I took disciplinary actions to include from simplest to most extreme. I can see it both ways, but disciplinary action is inclusive of dismissal.
So you thought it was a redundancy?
A bit, yes.
I think we have a policy about disciplinary action, right? And it includes the range.
It does.
Can I ask one question?
Does the range include dismissal?
Yeah.
So
It
wouldn't
does.
wouldn't this be contradictory since it's been taken out? If the other one includes it and this one doesn't, then they're kind of going against each other.
Yeah. When I say that it does include it, meaning as one of the final steps.
Yeah.
So there are obviously all other steps, starting with a verbal reprimand, all the way through dismissal or termination.
Can I ask a question about, I was asked this specifically after last year's discussion here. Teachers who are board members, who are school board members in their district, are they protected to have freedom of speech as board members in their district? And can they get into trouble with this policy by speaking their mind as a board member in their district?
It would be helpful to have an example. I can't think of one offhand that would land them in some sort of difficult situation. Do you have an example?
I guess if a teacher's a board member in their own district and they say something that contradicts the policies of our district, and they say this is what our district should do, but it contradicts this district. I don't know if that creates a disruption for us. I guess if parents don't want their kids in that teacher's class now, does that create a disruption for us? And I think they just need to know what to do. Is it already implied that they are stating clearly their expression represents their personal views and not those of this district because they're representing the other district?
That's where my mind went first. I don't know how clearly that's stated, but there seems to be quite a bit of latitude with the First Amendment, as we've learned over the years. And I just don't know in that case how likely it is that something said in a district 2 districts away would cause a disruption here. I don't know how likely that is. And maybe it does mean the individual has to preface a statement with, these are my personal views as a representative of this board, something like that.
How can you do that? You can't compel speech.
No, I agree. I mean, that's why I'm saying to me, I need a good example.
But we're compelling speech here.
How?
Rowan, you must state very clearly that your expression represents your personal views. That's what this is saying. You're compelling the teacher, you're compelling their speech. You're telling them that before they speak, they have to state clearly that it's their own personal expression. That's what this policy is saying right there.
And do you disagree with that?
Yes, I disagree with compelled speech. I disagree with compelled speech, period.
Is that in the law, though? If you look up the law and the details of the First Amendment, is that approach incorporated into the law?
I'm not a lawyer. I would have to suggest that we have the solicitor weigh in on that. I would say that in here, what does it mean where we're telling, we're gonna tell, we're gonna tell a teacher that they have to state clearly that his or her expression represents their personal views and not necessarily those of the school district. Where do they do that? Are we talking in person, in social media, in the supermarket? Where do they have to have that caveat? Do they have to carry a card with them?
Well, we have been.
We talked about this years ago, the year before I joined the board. If a board member goes out and says something really stupid about Larry Boa, and that he's a horrible baseball player, or he was a horrible coach, and he cost the Phils this season, they didn't make the playoffs. As a matter of fact, we shouldn't even play baseball in Pennsylvania. School shouldn't have it. It's just a waste of time and money. Should there be a caveat to that, right? Where does that compelled version of stating clearly that that's their own expression, where does it start? And refrain from making public expressions which he or she knows to be false or made without regard for truth or accuracy. Who's the regulator of truth or accuracy? There were statements made at this board meeting for years about masks that were false and inaccurate. We know that now. Some of us knew that then. But who's the regulator of truth and accuracy? Not make offense against coworkers. Yeah, that's, of course. We shouldn't do that. We can all agree. But who's going to regulate the truth? Who's going to be the one that says that's a true statement or that's a false statement? And who's going to state that, Chaz, before you told me X, Y, and Z, you didn't state clearly that your views didn't represent, because you're the union head now, that you and I were just shooting the water at the supermarket. Well, I didn't want to curse, right? You didn't state clearly that you weren't representing the union at that time. That's worrisome. So in this policy, I see compelled speech, and I also see that someone is going to tell us what's true and false. Don't know who that someone is.
But typically when there is an issue raised, somebody needs to investigate that to determine whether or not the evidence supports that this did happen or didn't happen. So somebody is making that determination. And that typically is an administrator who goes through that process.
This doesn't say anything about HR. This doesn't say, this is a policy that says the board acknowledges the right of the employee as a citizen in a democratic society, which we're not, we're a constitutional republic, to speak out on issues of public concern. And then we're saying that we have to make sure when they speak out that A, they caveat that it only represents their views, and B, it's got to be true, that they can't make false statements without regard for truth or accuracy. someone's going to tell us if that's a true or accurate statement.
Right.
I'm not really sure what that means and who's going to do that.
If those issues are related to the school district and its programs.
Yeah, correct.
Right. So if somebody speaks out about the district or its programs in an inaccurate way, somebody has to determine that,
Yeah.
and whether or not it had an impact on the district's operations.
We have a lot of programs
Mhm.
in the school district.
So it's
And
been,
I think-
I'm sorry, Dr. Weston, go
Sorry.
ahead.
This is not that uncommon, I think, a requirement or direction for somebody who is an employee of a company or an organization to have some, I don't want to call it restriction, but responsibility over what they say about what their company does or what their organization does in a public setting. When I was employed in the pharmaceutical industry, this was very much a requirement that I was not authorized to speak in public in any way, good, bad, or indifferent, about any of the products that I worked on, or really any of the products that my company produced or sold, because good, bad, or indifferent, that's not something I'm authorized to speak on in public. And what I say could potentially move the stock price of the company and affect the reputation of the company. So I see this in very much a similar way, that the people working for the district need to exercise responsibility in how they speak about things involving the district and the district's programs. It says the employee's freedom of expression must be balanced against the interests of the district.
Well, and I read this as a guideline for professionalism and decorum, as it pertains to a public face in the community, as a example to look, as a role model to look up to. We have lots of teachers that are residents of the district, and so if those individuals are out in the community making statements on social media, for example, like, as an educator, blah, 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 and it's in direct conflict with the mission of the work that the school district is doing, I would consider that applicable regardless of freedom of speech. But to Mr. Clellan's point, with regard to a teacher that lives in a different district holding public office, I think that is something that probably should be addressed as a layer of protection, because in that instance, the individual is not acting in capacity as a union member or as a teacher, as part of the bargaining unit. They're actually acting as a resident and an elected member of a different community. So they should be wholly protected in the same way that any elected official is protected. And to that point, I can see where the concern, I mean, if you're a teacher in any school district, any public school district, and you want to be part of a school board in a different school district, you're really putting yourself out on a limb in a charged environment where you really have to have a polarized opinion about certain topics. So in order to have a moral stance, you are, in this county anyway, going against potentially 50% of your constituency in your point of view. And so those teachers should be protected in their employed district. And that should be memorialized in some sort of a policy,
Well,
in my view.
let's take it to a case example. We just recently had a conversation about changing the schools, right? We had about changing the elementary school and the middle schools, all right? The administration had one point of view that they felt was the truth and the arbiter of truth for why we should make the decision, and they sold it to the board, right? If teachers came out or said this or posted that this is a horrible decision, the school shouldn't be doing that because this is blah and this is blah and this is blah, And the administration would come back and go, well, we actually don't believe what you said is actually true. We believe that's false information you're putting out there. Are they going to get in trouble? They're going against a district, right? A teacher's going against a district. They don't want to reassemble the school district. They want to keep everything as it is. And I'm going to advocate for it because I teach in the school district. And I'm going to go on the social media and I'm going to say this, that, and the third. And then the school comes back and go, we don't really believe you made truth, you made accurate statements for your arguments and you're going against the better interests of the school district. Could that be a problem?
So I think in that instance, we would absolutely consult with Mr. Subers.
That by itself that gives me massive pause.
Right.
That a teacher couldn't advocate for what they believe is right because the first thought process of the school is going to be, we have this policy and now we're going to have to consult with our solicitor. That would give me great pause.
Yeah, so that wouldn't be my first thought process. But the thought is that we would consult with the school solicitor to determine, is that an expression on an issue of public concern? Which in that case, it may very well be.
And it may not.
But it may very well be. And that's why we would want to get clarification as to, is this an issue of public concern? Because if it is, then that individual has the right to share their beliefs.
And it's not you're broaching it as a true or false. A difference of opinion is not true or false. A difference of opinion is a difference of philosophy. And there were teachers that came out and spoke against redistricting in this district who were actually employees of other districts, but they were speaking in the capacity as a resident and a parent, not as an employee of the district that they came from. Yeah. So a difference of opinion is different than true or false.
Correct, but now we have to, as we just stated, now we have to figure out what a public concern is going to be. You're putting a lot of questions on a policy that's supposed to be about freedom of speech in non-instructional settings. Now we need to understand what our solicitor believes is public concern. Then we got to understand who's the arbiter of that truth of that public concern. And, that would...
But you're using truth and opinion and interchangeably, and is what I'm hearing.
Well, it says truth or accuracy.
Well, truth and accuracy is different than opinion. An opinion is just what you wholeheartedly believe. There are people that believe lots of things that are just blatantly false.
I'm giving you my concern about the policy.
I understand, but you're talking about opinion, and these words don't state opinion or difference of opinion. I guess that's my interpretation of the policy. To me, truth and accuracy are very specific, provable things, which I think is what Mr. Moran had pointed to with regard to research would need to be done to support with evidence.
Yeah, and the reason I point out in consultation with the solicitor is mainly because we want to ensure that it's not just one individual person making that decision. It is in consultation with somebody that has the legal background to afford us, that opportunity really to get clarification. And again, as a district, we value the input from our stakeholders. So I think in the example that you had given, Mr. Saylor, we encouraged individuals to provide their opinions, whether it was in agreement or disagreement with what the district was trying to accomplish.
Well, what do we mean when we say that when the issues are related to the school district and its programs, the employee's freedom of expression must be balanced against the interests of the district? What does that mean then? Give me an example when the employee has to balance their freedom of expression to the interests of the school district.
Would it be amenable to the committee to have a discussion with regards to this with the solicitor present, just so we can all gain clarity with the same point, with the same ears?
Listen, if the union doesn't have any problems with this, I'm barking up the wrong tree to begin with anyway. Who cares what I think? I'm just one person. I always have questions, but if the teachers don't have a problem with the policy, why would I?
And when they're engaged in assigned duties.
If you could just hit your mic.
Well, that was fine. And then when they're engaged in assigned duties, there's possible discipline when they're voicing their own opinion and, espousing like political views in class or something like that. know, is that the flip side of this policy? Is there, what's that addressed with? How's that addressed?
Yeah.
It's not addressed by this one. Is there another policy that addresses that? Or no, it's just straight up, I don't know, I'm just asking, because that's the other side of this, right? Because they're, you know, worried about, you know, always worried about teachers, you know.
So in 321, it talks about political activities and the appropriateness. The next policy on the next page.
Okay.
So, again,
And bringing those
I do
things
think that
into
they-
the classroom and telling the kids like how to vote and things like that, or not?
I would say that would be against
would
the
be-
policy. But
Right. I'm just saying, when that happens, then what happens? Because I didn't know what to do, you know, see what happening. I don't want to make a stink out of it either.
What's your
But
question?
anyway, I'll
Wait, say that again. If there's like, what is it?
You know, like, for example, teachers telling the students how to vote.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Or they have signs in
I
their
was just
room.
wondering,
Or they have
you know,
signs in their
because
room.
this is about statements, you know, outside of the
Yeah.
classroom.
So like if they have a sign in their room that has a student go to moveon.org, which rips a bunch of people, that's okay.
Right. Well, yeah. No, I was. They
Oh, no,
bring in literature.
it is
and
okay,
says,
'cause it's on
don't,
doors now.
You know, don't vote for these people. Vote
Yeah.
for these people.
No, they do that now. That's on door of rooms in this building.
I just want to know what the. I just wanted to talk about the.
Yeah.
We'll get there, I guess. Very good.
Yeah, that would fall under policy 321.
All right.
But it's allowed now.
so, Mr. Keenan, your question is, what disciplinary action is taken if the policy is broken?
Well, this is so. Right now, we're talking about
We're talking about freedom of speech.
a statement outside of in their private lives that could be seen to impact the school district
Correct.
in some way, and therefore be restricted, perhaps causing discipline in their job.
Correct.
And I suggested we table it to involve the solicitor in a full table discussion.
Well, yeah, I mean, any action against any employee that infringes on their, you know, freedom of speech in their personal lives for, you know, this type of job would be, every single one would be subject to legal analysis at that time and probably improper. But, you know, if we have this policy, it doesn't help the situation, essentially, you know. I mean, if you discipline somebody for using their, you know, for rightfully using their free speech, that's not going to go well in a government scenario, in a government job, essentially.
Serving the public.
But what's that?
Serving the public.
Serving, well, they have a job, right, with the government doing that, the government doing that to them, you know. It's a little different than, it depends on what branch of the government, but it's a little different than, you know, Lockheed Martin or Pfizer.
It's not a private enterprise.
Limiting somebody's speech and they have a private job, you know,
Right.
they have other rights in their government job, just in their contracts.
So that's 320, but then you brought up a point to 321, and
I guess I was getting ahead of myself.
and that's fine. I do think that there is overlap between the two, and so we can also discuss that one directly with the solicitor during governance, if
Yeah,
that's
and we can't answer those questions because we don't know what that thing would be that they would say that would be untrue or inaccurate, that would harm the district or, you know.
So just to take an example, as I'm thinking here of you know, looking at the bullet here, refraining from making public expressions which she or he knows to be false or made without regard for truth or accuracy. There are claims made by members of the public from time to time about various schools that there are litter boxes in the bathrooms for students to use who think they are cats. And that is patently ridiculous, but the rumor still goes around. And if it ever happened that a teacher in PV claimed that we have litter boxes in the bathrooms for use of students who think they're cats. I would think we would want to take some action against that employee to get them to stop saying stupid things like that. And I think that's the kind of thing that this policy, as it's written here, would be trying to address. I mean, that's a kind of a facetious example, but it's along the lines of what I think we're talking about here. I would not think
Biology
that would
teacher.
be a protected statement, because, you know, it's something that is clearly false. The person who's saying it knows that it's false, but if they're making it anyway, they shouldn't be allowed to say it.
Or if we had a biology teacher saying boys could be girls, you know, something like that. That would be patently false and destructive and towards.
So we're going to go ahead, Mr. Keenan, we're going to table these to have the conversation with the full board and the solicitor, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page. Because again, difference of opinion and actual provable facts.
Or science, right? We're talking science now.
And sex from a biological standpoint is a very complicated subject, and it's more than we're going to get into in the last few minutes of this meeting.
All right, so we have about 10 minutes left. I'd like to move on to policy 322. We're going to discuss 320 and 321 with the solicitor during governance. 322 is gifts, Mr. Moran.
Okay, policy 322, gifts. So at our last discussion, the committee asked administration to further define nominal value and requested the solicitor review this policy before returning to the next committee meeting. You see there's a definition by the school solicitor regarding nominal value. Based on what has been provided, we're recommending that no revisions to the current policy language are recommended at this time.
I have no issue with that. Does anyone on the committee have any issue with that? Okay, no revisions. 307, student teachers. No recommended changes. 325, no recommended changes with regard to dress code. 326 is the complaint policy. No recommended changes. 337, vacation, no recommended changes. 338, sabbatical leave, no recommended changes. 338.1, compensated professional leave, no changes recommended. 341, benefits for regularly employed part-time support personnel, no recommended changes. 342, jury duty and subpoenas, no recommended changes, but there were AR regulations developed. Oh, I guess that was redundant. Administrative regulations developed. 343 is holidays, no recommended changes, and 349 is the employee exit interview and survey. Mr. Moran, did you want to speak on that?
Yeah, so the changes for that policy have to do with changing our process to be more efficient, more effective. So previously, it was a survey that individuals would complete. If you just give me 1 second, I want to pull that up. There was 2 sections of the survey. One section was completed by the immediate supervisor, which was really a checklist to make sure that we collected all necessary items from the employee as they separate from the district. We have since updated that procedure and have different processes in place for that. So the checklist as part of the survey is no longer valid.
All right, does anybody have any questions or comments with regard to 349 employee exit interview? All right, seeing none, I appreciate the respectful acknowledgement of holding conversation for governance for the full board so we can have a more in-depth conversation with the solicitor. And with that, I will move on to section 3.
Okay, we'll see if we can move through these PNN policies. They were updates that came to the district recently, June 2025. Mr. Weaver is prepared to speak to 626, 626.1, and 827.
Thank you, Dr. Russell. Yes, 626 and 626.1 are driven by PNN developments associated with federal fiscal compliance and travel reimbursement. There were several cleanup definitions that were provided by PSBA. including clarification of what a single audit now applies to. Instead of $750,000 per program, it's now $1 million, so it's pretty straightforward. They are removing any references to the aforementioned EDGAR, which stands for Education Department General Administrative Regulations, and replacing that with federal regulations as a general statement associated with everything associated with federal grant monies as it pertains to Perkiomen Valley School Districts. It also changed the initial PNN recommendation was to change to 3 years for standard record retention. However, the district has just been through its own federal monitoring process, and they were requesting 7 years. So we did bring that back up to PSBA. Oftentimes we talk about, do we look at what PSBA provides and just put it in lock, stock, and barrel? We do not. We do a lot of good research on that. We actually touch back and base with PDE to make sure what the clarification was, because we currently have 5 years based upon a previous PNN recommendation, and they wanted us to go down to 3. We brought up the federal monitoring, and they agreed that we should stay to 7 years. So the change, therefore, goes from 5 years in the current policy to 7 years, and that's our recommendation. It also added some significant language associated with whistleblower, which is a newer type of topic that we need to be into consideration. And then on the back end, that was the actual policy. So any questions or concerns about those standard changes, those adjustments, and some of those other areas that we added? If not, moving forward, I would also point out that the whistleblower language has been added to our website as well. That is one of the questions. It is not in our handbook. That was an option, but we put it on our website. One other thing is that it adjusted many of the back-ended ARs associated with 626. There was an awful lot of reference and changes, and you can see in those documents as well that there was an awful lot of effort put into those to bring those ARs into up to date, associated once again with federal fiscal compliance, associated with federal monies that the school district may work on. Any questions or concerns about those ARs? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver.
Thank you. Moving forward to the 626.1, there was a clarification and cleanup again per the PNN. There is association with reimbursements and what those reimbursements may drive. And also it reflected a little bit of experiences as we come out of the post-pandemic world about what items needed to be tidied up, so to speak, in these federal compliance guidelines. And so it's pretty much straightforward. And again, give a little bit more flexibility associated with the Federal General Services Administration for employees, federal employees associated with travel reimbursement. Again, a lot of that was driven by IRS regulations, but it is bringing it into the envelope for federal grants at this point in time. Any questions on that? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Russell, 827.
So the last policy that came through the PNN was a conflict of interest policy, and the updates there were again connected to federal requirements, which seemed to be the focus of the PNN, and addressing the provision of written notice to employees regarding their protections, particularly if they are categorized as a whistleblower, they report something. We have made revisions in the draft policy aligned to PSBA's recommendations, and they appear here. And as Mr. Weaver said, we've updated our website to provide that information there with some of the other notifications that we are obligated to provide our community. Do we need more time with this one, or are we okay to move it to first read? You okay? Okay.
So I guess the only thing that I will ask with regard to conflict of interest, this piece here, has financial or other interest in or a tangible personal benefit from an entity considered for a contract. What if that entity is actually on contract? A consortium. Like Co-Stars or,
We could get clarification from Mr. Subers, but I think in that particular case, it's a procurement platform that has been vetted.
I would agree with that, but that's not stipulated in the policy. So, and I know that there are instances that generally for capital improvements or maintenance items, we use services that are provided by way of consortium. And I agree with you with regard to their government regulated. I just want to make sure that the language is clear so it cannot be perceived that there is a conflict of interest just by association.
Fair enough, we can follow up with Mr. Subers just to make sure.
Thank you, Mr. Reaver. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
That brings us to.
Well, before we go off to local policies, I just wanted to bring up again, I know we're not bringing up the part of the PNN that talked about curriculum, and we're saving that to November. But I just wanted to clarify, part of the new school code has some changes that are happening now. And PNN stated that legal reasons, the school should be changing their policies. What are we doing on the 17th to meet that policy for Constitution Day?
So that's something that I've communicated to principals, and in the past, we have done some things. It seems to be a bit more formalized now through these policy changes, so I'll talk about that in my superintendent's report tonight. And I am going to inform the community in a newsletter tomorrow also about some of these new and updated observations, they call them. And we will do our very best to incorporate them and take the time to incorporate them into the curriculum documents, which is their intent. I mean, we got the information this summer, so that work wasn't done. It wasn't formalized and called out in the way that you'll see it in my report tonight, but we will take steps to do that. And even if we don't have the policy approved, we will uphold these new regulations because we've been informed of them.
So in years past, in the middle schools, or maybe it was elementary schools, constitutions were given out. This is talking the whole entity. So it's, elementary schools, middle schools, and high school.
Right.
Right. So we do have something planned for that. And is it okay that it's not set into our policies as noted? It's recommended for legal liability purposes to have these policy meetings before November, because Constitution is the school code calls for the Constitution to be done prior to September 17th, and there was Willard Day on the 28th and William Penn Day on around the 24th.
Right.
So on and around the 24th could lead into November, but for at least Constitution Day and Francis Willard Day, those two things are being called specifically for the 28th. The easier one is Francis Willard Day because we're just going to observe it. That can easily be done in all school buildings on that day. The Constitution one is a little bit different, and I was curious because it does talk about training new employees as well. Is that something that we're doing? We're training new employees on the Constitution?
No. We don't typically offer formalized professional learning necessarily, but we do inform our teachers that deliver instruction, particularly in social studies and sometimes English. There are a variety of activities. We give them links and resources that they can tap into as they help students to understand the Constitution, its origin, and what it means for us as a country.
But it says provide educational training materials concerning the U.S. Constitution to each employee or agency department on September 17th of each year.
So that they can celebrate the day.
Correct.
Yes. We typically share links and resources via email. What I envision happening is that we will actually take steps to incorporate something more formal in the curriculum documents that our teachers reference so that there is more for them to choose from, and it will be something that our teachers contribute to with our curriculum supervisors.
Got it.
So, the prompting from the PNN and the legislature
Very late,
has-
by the way, correct.
very late, and has prompted us, though, that we need to take some steps and update our curriculum documents.
I mean, frankly, it's embarrassingly late. They gave you like 7 days because it was
In
the
August.
20th of August.
Right, they
Yeah.
provided some more details. Nonetheless, we're celebrating, we're honoring Patriot Day this week. We will honor Constitution Day next week and those other days that we need to recognize. So principals have been informed. I'll continue to work with them, and we'll recruit our supervisors from curriculum to assist. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, sure.
Moving on to section 4, there are no policies, local policies to review this cycle. And that moves us to section 5, closing items. 5.01, policy committee notes will be posted. Meeting dates are posted. Our next meeting is October 13th. Notice of video disclaimer, and 5.04 is adjournment. We will take 2 minutes to reset the table for our meeting. Thank you. 11. And with that, I call the meeting to order. Roll call, Ms. Widener.
Dr. Campley?
Here.
Mr. Fountain? Mr. Keenan?
Here.
Mr. Liggett?
Present.
Mr. McKinney?
Here.
Dr. Sadler?
Here.
Mr. Saylor?
Present.
Dr. Weston?
Here.
Ms. White?
Here.
Oh, Bob said it first.
1.03, 1.04, Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silent reflection.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
One 1.05, reading of the PVSD mission statement. Dr. Campley, would you mind? Oh, there you go.
Mission of the Perkiomen Valley School District is to cultivate an inclusive community of learners empowered to grow intellectually, socially, and emotionally.
Thank you so much. 1.06, approval of the agenda as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Motion and a second. Comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. 1.07, approval of the minutes. This is a request to approve the minutes for August 11th and September 2nd, 2025. May I have a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. 1.08, a special recognition for this evening is with regards to the civics exam that is taken each year by our 8th graders, and I will turn it over to Dr. Russell and Mr. McKinney.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you again for the opportunity to recognize some of our students. We're proud to recognize 3 outstanding Perkiomen Valley students this evening. We're going to start with recognizing the outstanding achievement of students who earned a perfect score on the district's civic assessment. 8th graders take the civics assessment in the spring of their 8th grade year. And the exam is developed by, or has been developed by, our social studies department, and it is administered annually to students. It covers essential topics in U.S. history, in government, and civics, of course. Now, I mentioned to the students in advance of this evening, we typically have a larger group. This year, we only have 2 students that we're recognizing that earned this perfect score. So kudos to them. The first is Gabriel Camargo. Sorry, Gabriel. Gabriel, we want to give you a, come on up here. Yep, you're doing the right thing. I know it's a little uncomfortable. Congratulations again. And we have a certificate for you from Mr. McKinney and a homemade cookie by our food service department. The cookies are these are important to individuals recognized, so just try it. You're going to love it. Stand right here if that's okay. All right. Congratulations. And Gabriel is in AP Government this year here at the high school as a 9th grader. So his passion for government and the humanities hasn't stopped. We also have Alyssa McDonough, another 9th grader who earned a perfect score as an 8th grader. Congratulations, Alyssa, again. And thank you for being brave and coming up here for your certificate and your cookie. So we'll ask you to stand here for a minute while we recognize one more student, and then we're going to take a break and a picture. Okay. So congratulations once again to you both. That is no easy feat to earn a perfect score on the civics assessment. Next, we recognize one of our North Montco Technical Career Center students, Olivia Giordani. She's a 12th grader this year studying construction carpentry. Congratulations again, Olivia. I met Olivia in my role as the superintendent of record for North Montco. And oftentimes we recognize North Montco Career Center students for their success in competitions, the variety of competitions that they participate in. And while I got to know Olivia a little bit at North Montco, she actually has been elected to the Skills USA State Office for the 25-26 school year. And she will serve as the Eastern Region Vice President this school year. It's really an honor, and we're really privileged to have her be a part of it and to be here tonight so we could recognize you. We recognized her at North Montco, and we wanted to do the same. Mr. Fountain and Mr. McKinney are also on the JOC there. We wanted to do the same here. So thank you for coming. And congratulations again. That is quite an honor. All right, so I'll defer to Ms. White, but I believe we get a 5-minute break. We're going to take you out there in the lobby. We're going to grab another picture, and we'll post some things on social media if you're okay with that. Okay? All right, congratulations again.
Dr. Parr, do you want to meet us out there? Okay. So then we will then move on to comments on any topic. 1.09, comments on any topic. The board affords the public an opportunity to comment on any topic of their choosing for a duration of 3 minutes. Please state your name and municipality. I open the floor. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to reports and presentations. Without Mr. Rapp, Mr. Lees will head it up.
Yep, all alone. Unfortunately,
No worries.
Grayson is sick, but hopefully I'll manage. We hope everyone enjoyed the weekend and is ready for the first full week of the school year. In athletics, the football team pulled off a 17-16 win over Downington Abbey, and the boys varsity cross country team also won the Kutztown Invitational on Saturday, with Kyle Tracy finishing first in the entire Invitational. And then a few more important dates that we also mentioned last week, but picture days are September 11th and 12th, and Meet the Teacher Night is on September 18th. And then yearbooks and class of 2026 blankets are also now on sale, and yearbooks are being discounted until October 31st, so make sure to get on that.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Lees. 2.02, President's Report. I have,
Mr. Lays, was there something else you wanted to bring up? Was there something else you wanted to bring up?
Oh, sure, I'm happy to bring it up now. I mentioned it to Mr. Saylor before the meeting, but it's come to me and other students and faculty's attention. The Pledge of Allegiance has not been said yet in the school year. I had the opportunity to speak to Dr. Fuller quickly before the meeting started. He said it'll start tomorrow, so that's definitely good to hear. But I think I can speak for everyone and say that the Pledge of Allegiance is a very important piece of, how we do things. As far as I understand, it's required by Pennsylvania state law to be said. So it's good to hear that it will be said going forth, but it's something the administration needs to be, that needs to be caught earlier and said every day, and not just, we'll get to it 2 weeks in. So good to hear it will be said.
thank you for your advocacy, Mr. Lees. 2.02 is the President's Report. I have nothing. Dr. Russell, 2.03, your Superintendent's Report, Part 2.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Lees, for having the conversation with Dr. Fuller. I appreciate you doing that and bringing it to his attention to discuss. And I'm appreciative to hear that that's been corrected. Thank you. So this evening, I have a Part 2, very brief Superintendent's Report prompted by some of our policy work. There were policy updates that the district received this summer, and I want to call those out and recognize for the benefit of the full board and for the community through a newsletter tomorrow, some of the recognitions that we are obligated to have in place here in school. And the first is Patriot Day, which comes this week, where our principals are preparing to honor those that lost their lives or served as heroes, helped others on 9/11/2001 with a moment of silence, and that will occur Thursday in our schools this week. So some background and additional information about Patriot Day. There are also some other days that are important for us to recognize, and these will be called out and incorporated eventually into Policy 105, presuming our board approves this and the particular language. But there's a message that we as a public school system must recognize to start, in addition to Patriot Day, Constitution Day, which comes next week. And we often encourage our teachers with some different resources to consider different activities based on the age of their students, but to expose our students to the Constitution and what it means to have a Constitution, to promote civic awareness, give them some sort of understanding of the country's history and a cultural appreciation among all in our school community. So Constitution Day comes next week. And then as we move through, there are additional days. Here's a quick list. But before the board meeting during policy, if you caught some of that on September 28th, is the recognition of Frances Willard, and she is a woman that did a lot of work for women's suffrage and then some broad social reforms. There's some history there that's listed, some of the things that she advocated for in such a way that she was successful. And she now has made a name for herself and will be recognized on a regular basis. September 28th, William Penn Day. Our fourth graders do a lot of work in the area of Pennsylvania history. And his day is recognized in October. And some of the things that he contributed, the largest and probably the one that most of us are aware of is founding Pennsylvania. That will be something we review with our students and make sure is a part of our curriculum. The Bill of Rights week or day falls in December, and we celebrate the ratification of the Bill of Rights, which occurred in 1791, and the first 10 amendments of the Constitution. And then there are 2 additional days. The fact that public education is quote unquote free for all students, they have access. I recognize it's not necessarily free, but it is a different system from those of the private schools. They're not tuition based, so the public schools and free school day is something that'll be recognized in April, and that was advocated for by some individuals that led in Pennsylvania. And Arbor Day. The last day that we are obligated to call out and make sure students have an awareness of is Arbor Day. That's now celebrated in all 50 states and really brings individuals' attention back to the environment and encourages them to consider planting a tree or thinking about sustainable resources and some of the things that we can do to maintain a healthy environment, clean air, etc. So please know that this policy these days, beyond Patriot Day, which is represented and spoken to in Policy 807, the additional days that we were informed of and are now a part of school code will be a part of Policy 105. That comes up for review this fall. And then we will take steps to make sure that the language representing these days is incorporated into the curriculum documents, as we are obligated to do. We'll make sure that's taken care of this school year. In the meantime, we will do our very best to celebrate across the board in ways that are understandable based on the ages of our students. Thank you.
Dr. Russell? Yeah, I understand. I had asked you if you wouldn't mind just highlighting these because obviously we got them very late and they were unfortunately unable to be formally incorporated into curriculum as the school year started. But as we go through and the curriculum team develops lessons and activities associated with acknowledging these days, is that something that you think would have we would have conversation on at Education Committee as it's brought forward? What would be the
We could
plan
do
of
that.
action?
I mean, we could do that if it would please the board, because it's an Education Committee of the whole. We can certainly talk about how we incorporate these days, the recognition of these days, the observations, and what it is some of our students would do. We can give you some examples of what we would encourage.
That would be helpful.
Many of them will come through social studies curriculum.
And I understand some curriculum, depending on the grade, has these topics incorporated already.
Right.
But considering it's a district-wide or a statewide initiative to acknowledge these days, I guess what I thought of as I was reading through would maybe be more community-based, school-wide objectives and experiences. I know that Mr. Saylor previously mentioned handing out of constitutions. I don't believe that happens uniformly throughout all of our buildings. I think that is a representative initiative. They come into the building, individual building, and hand those out. I don't believe that's every building currently experiences that.
It's not. We've made donations before. I think last year and the year before, I donated about 1,000 pocket handbooks to the school district to hand out to the middle schools.
The middle schools, right, but it's not a district-wide initiative. So I guess that was my point in creating building initiatives to have some sort of a formal experience of some sort. I just think it would cover the standard requirement and just allow for more uniformity between buildings.
And consistency, yes, I
Consistency.
agree.
That's really
I
where
agree.
that's what I was getting at. Not that some of these conversations weren't already happening. Obviously, Bill of Rights is already discussed. Arbor Day is a great opportunity for our Arboretum to get involved in some sort of a district-wide initiative. We have some time for that. Obviously, that's April.
Right, and we do have some serious dedicated individuals to
Right.
Arbor Day or Earth Day when
Right.
it happens in April. Our science teachers and some of the work connected to the Arboretum is really representative of that dedication, their commitment to the environment. Yeah, the challenging part here is how do we recognize all of these days? We observe all of these days in every grade. So
Right.
that will take some work and some thinking on the part of our curriculum team to make sure that we have age-appropriate activities at all levels so that students begin to understand and recognize these observations.
And I think that that's why I thought automatically towards a building initiative to create more of a community. Specifically with regard to Free School Day, as you mentioned, school is indeed not free. We fund it through our tax dollars, but students are able to receive a free education through that. But that would be a wonderful opportunity to tie into some civic engagement with regards to districts that perhaps have less. And I think that would maybe be a nice talking point to tie in a lesson with regards to public education inequality. It's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, thank you.
If I
We can
could just-
follow up at an education committee of the whole.
And when you're doing those types of district-wide initiatives to bring awareness, I think it makes it a little bit easier on the classroom teachers and the time that they have to spend on topics, because when they're trying to get through the curriculum that they have to get through
Especially
for
if it's not part of their curriculum.
a social studies, curriculum and their science curriculum and their reading curriculum, when you have 5, 6, 7 extra days that they have to come up with activities for, it really takes away from the time devoted in the classroom that they need, that we all know time's a crunch, to put towards the curriculum that they're already need to devote time towards. So if it's like a district-wide initiative where they can be doing things and it's not as teacher-focused, where it's taking away from classroom-focused time on the curriculum that they already have to meet, I think that teachers would appreciate that.
But thank
I
you
have-
for embracing it and acknowledging it so quickly.
I have a specific question about Patriot Day. Dr. Russell, we just had a conversation last week about the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah.
So the fact that it's not being done in the high school, and now who knows if it's being done in the other schools, is extremely disappointing. But I'm curious, how do we differentiate Patriot Day than the normal Pledge of Allegiance and moment of silence that currently happens?
So I know that there were recommendations for some of the times of day or in the morning that principals may organize the moment of silence in their buildings based upon when students arrive. I know that principals have plans. I don't know the details of those plans, but they are above and beyond the Pledge of Allegiance and the moment of silence. And certainly I'll follow up with our principals about making sure they are upholding that policy and hosting the Pledge of Allegiance every day.
Okay, because your PowerPoint presentation states more than the policy. I like the PowerPoint presentation more, to be honest with you. The policy just states as a line item that on September 11th, 2001, there'll be a moment of silence. This gets specific into honoring the lives lost and the heroism displayed in the tragic day.
Right.
We'd love to get some information. Obviously, it'll be after it happens now on what was done in the buildings on Thursday.
Right. I can follow up, sure. Because I did talk to principals about it Friday, and they all had plans.
Okay.
So they're preparing to make sure that they hold this event Thursday.
I know some schools, obviously not our school district, but some schools do a tone salute
Okay.
when the towers came down.
Okay. So that's interesting. I don't know that we're doing anything outside of truly a moment of silence, but I'd like to prompt their thinking around that. And if it doesn't happen this year, maybe there's something like that can happen next year.
Thank you.
Yep.
Dr. Russell, you'll follow up on Friday then, if you wouldn't mind in the memo.
I will do that. Yes.
If I can add a little more context, when the Pledge of Allegiance is said, I think for the past couple of years at this point, there has also always been a moment of silence after the Pledge of Allegiance every day as normal. I think it was one of the student leadership meetings we had with Dr. Fuller, and he was thinking of changing that to a moment of quiet reflection that didn't end up happening before the end of the school year. But if it is to be differentiated, it will need to be more than just a moment of silence, because that is usually done every day. So.
That ended your report, correct, Dr. Russell? I'm sorry, I went back with questions.
It did, thank you.
Thank you so much,
Yep.
Dr. Russell. Solicitor's report, Mr. Subers, 2.04.
I have no report.
Thank you, Mr. Subers. Board and District Committee reports, 2.05. Board and District Committees are listed with dates, our upcoming dates. Our next policy meeting, as I mentioned, will be October 13th. We have Act 48 on the 21st of October. Assessment meets on the 15th of October. Our Education Committee of the Whole meets this Wednesday on September 10th. Immediately prior to that, we will meet with Wellness at 6 p.m. We have the 16th, September 16th, is a Safety and Operations meeting. Regional Planning will happen on the 15th. Foundation, Dr. Weston, you have that on your docket for September 30th, correct?
Yes.
MCIU Board, Mr. Liggett, September 24th. MCIU Legislative, actually, they moved their meeting. It was actually on Yom Kippur for our next meeting. I had sent an email and communication with that. Now they've moved it to our second Monday meeting, so I will be unable to attend, but I will pass on the notes. And then JOC is September 15th. Does anyone have anything to add to any of the district board or committee comments? Okay, moving on. We are in section 3, consent agenda. Excuse me. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. Section 4, Education, Mr. McKinney.
Thank you, Ms. White. Dr. Hanrahan, do you have anything to add to your report from last week?
Thank you.
So we did go back to the team to revise the biology curriculum, and then actually met with Dr. Weston to just discuss the changes that we made. So you'll see those changes reflected in the document that you see before you today.
Okay, so 4.02, which is the biology in our systems curriculum. Are there any questions or comments or concerns after the updates? Okay.
You need to make the motion, Mr. McKinney.
Right, I was just giving folks an opportunity.
Oh,
to-
after we motion in
Oh,
second.
okay, motion. Thank you, Ms. White.
No worries.
You were so amazing. Thank
Well, yeah, I am pretty great. Go
Um,
ahead.
you. Motion to approve the biology in our systems curriculum.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Comments or questions? Okay, seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carries.
4.03 is on consent. 4.04 is the enrollment report. 4.05 is approval of field trips. This is a new added item. Any question? Motion to approve?
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Comments or questions? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carries.
And that ends my section, Ms. White.
Thank you, Mr. McKinney. Mr. Liggett, Business, Section 5.
Thank you. Mr. Weaver, anything to add?
I do have one update. Last week, the school board asked me to double check with the MCIU about the listing of federal programs that might be impacted by federal grants. I did reach out to them on Wednesday. I'm still waiting for that list, but they are aware of that and they are working on that.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. The rest of the section, 5.02 through 6, are all on consent. There is no report for this month for grants and donations. That ends my section.
Great work, Mr. Liggett. Section 6, Payment of Bills, Mr. Saylor.
6.0 runs ratification of bills and payroll and authorization of appointments, and 6.02 the approval of the treasurer's report and financial statements, and I so move.
there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Comments or questions? All in favor? Against? Motion carries.
And so ends my section.
Thank you, Mr. Saylor. Dr. Sadler, Section 7, Professional Personnel.
7.01 through 7.12 are all on consent. That ends my section.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sadler. Section 8, Dr. Campley, Support Personnel.
Yes, thank you. 8.01 through 8.07 are all on consent. That ends my section.
Fabulous, Dr. Campley. Thank you so much. Dr. Weston, Governance. Dr. Weston, Governance.
Thank you,
Section
Ms.
9.
White. Item 9.01 is on consent. Items 9.02 and 9.03, action was taken last week, and that ends Section 9.
Okay, so with regard, thank you, Dr. Weston. With regard to Section 9, we had tabled two policy conversation items, two policy numbers for conversation during our committee meeting. And that was for policy 320 and 321. And so I opened the table for further discussion at this point.
I thought we were going to have the solicitor clarify.
Right, but he wasn't here, so if somebody would bring up to speed his,
If there's a particular
right.
question.
Right, for the others that weren't there, I think that if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Saylor, just with a Cliff's Note version of some of the concerns that you have that you'd like Mr. Subers to speak to, so other board members can be just brought up to speed.
Sure, let me bring up the policy meeting. Where is 320, 626? So you're talking about freedom of speech policy? PSBA has actually changed the title from freedom of speech in non-instructional settings to just freedom of speech. But there were questions and concerns about some statements in the policy about, let's see, I first had a concern in the purpose statement where it says, when those issues are related to the school district and its programs, the employee's freedom of expression must be balanced against the interest of the district. I had concerns what that meant. I also wanted to clarify where it says that employees should refrain from making public expressions with he or she knows to be false or made without regard for truth or accuracy. Who is going to be the regulator of truth and accuracy?
So first, with regard to the introductory language under purpose for saying clarifying situations in which an employee's expression can conflict with the district's interests, it's important to note that this is referencing when the employee is not engaged in assigned duties. Under the First Amendment, a public employee who is speaking as a private citizen and not in their capacity as a public employee does have First Amendment protection when they're addressing matters of public importance as opposed to matters of personal grievance relating to their employment. And this is outside of the scope of their employment. When the public employee is speaking within the scope of their employment, the employer has significant control over what information is being communicated. And so that we would have significant control over anything that's being communicated in the classroom. This really, even though they changed the name of it, really does deal with speech outside of school.
Correct, but we're not, well, to that first point, we're not suggesting we change the title. We still left it as freedom of speech in non-instructional settings.
Okay.
At least that's what it still says.
And then with respect to, so if those two criteria are met, if they're speaking as a private citizen and if they're speaking on a matter of public concern, then you would apply a balancing test. I don't know if this is what you need, but you apply the Pickering-Koenig balancing test which balances the employee's right to free speech versus the employer's interests in the efficiency of their operation. And it typically is a sliding scale. The more important the matter is of public importance, or the greater degree of public importance, the greater the reasonableness or reasonably likely disruption must be. So that's always going to be a balancing test.
Correct. But where does it start? So first it says the employee must state clearly that his expressions represent their personal views, right?
This is that, and I mean, as I read that, and I just saw it today, someone else was working on these policies for the district, and they actually, when I reviewed what they reviewed, the guideline information was still in there as far as the disruption. But what you're referring to are really guidelines or recommendations to employees to help them stay out of trouble with their speech.
But we added that. That's not, PSBA is not recommending that we say.
The following some guidelines?
Correct.
Yeah.
PV is saying that, right?
Okay.
So, my question.
Excuse me. It's not required by the Supreme Court
It's not required, no.
that
it's
you
not
state
required.
that this is my personal opinion. If you're speaking on a matter of public
If
concern,
you're speaking as a private citizen on matters of public concern.
it's just
So,
a question of fact.
Correct, and I think this is meant to provide the employee guidance to be careful, and there's no harm in clarifying. You're not required to do it under law, but it certainly would assist that person in their defense of any discipline by stating that they're speaking as a
Bless you.
private citizen.
But not to, just working very narrowly on the language of this policy, we couldn't, and not to criticize it too much, but to be clear, we couldn't actually discipline somebody. I mean, we're encouraging them to. We say you should, but it does say you could possibly face discipline if you did not. But we actually couldn't discipline them if they just didn't say, "This is my personal opinion,"
I would agree.
and not the opinion of the PV school district.
I would agree that
If it was a
it would
matter
be a
of,
factor to be considered in determining whether or not they were speaking as a private citizen
but
or a
just
public
for
employee.
that, we couldn't discipline.
No, you'd have to look at the totality of the circumstances. And again, you're going to have to look at the totality of the circumstances in these cases, because this is extremely nuanced, extremely complex. There's cases coming out all the time that are kind of
But
moving
we're
the
making it
target.
complex, not PSPA. PSPA doesn't have these guidelines. For some reason, PV does. The PSPA guidelines, which reference some of the issues that you're talking about, like Pickering and Doherty versus School District of Pennsylvania, don't give stipulated guidelines like Perkiomen Valley's stipulated guidelines are. My concern is not with the policy that PSPA is saying. My concern is we've added 3 guidelines that are not in the policy items. As a solicitor, are you suggesting we continue with those guidelines? And then how do we defend those guidelines?
So, Mr. Saylor, I just want to offer correction. PSBA is recommending guidelines. If you look at the PSBA version, Volume 2, 2025, they have the 4 guidelines. Administration did not agree with those guidelines. They're not recommending them.
Yeah.
But they did encourage those. They did recommend them in their version.
Their guidelines are disciplined by supervisors, having detrimental impact on close working relationships, requiring loyalty and confidence, impeding the performance of duties of employees that conducted the speech, or interference with the operation of the school district. We're saying that you have to articulate that these views are clearly yours and yours alone. We're saying you have to refrain from making public expressions which they know to be false or made without regard for truth and accuracy. The PSBA is not mentioning that at all. And I don't know where we are using, what legal background are we saying we have the right to stipulate to our teachers that they have to refrain from making a public expression which he or she knows to be false or made without regard for truth or accuracy? What legal binding do we have to tell the staff that?
Well, in regard to that issue, and again, these are
Where in the law?
when you look up the definition of the First Amendment and violations of it, false statements or being dishonest is not necessarily with that language, but it's in there.
It's defamatory language.
Yes.
I think that's meant to,
Right.
defamation is not protected free speech. And I think that's what that number 2 references.
But it doesn't say defamatory statements.
Well, it could be clarified.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to revise that part of it.
And again, I mean, another attorney in my office reviewed these. I reviewed what she sent out to Dr. Russell, and I noted a correction or two, or a suggestion or two.
What would you consider to be a public concern?
What,
One example. What did you just say, Ms. White? I didn't hear you. Your microphone was off.
Anything that the public takes concern with would theoretically be a public
Hey,
concern.
school safety.
School safety.
Student harassment.
Okay. So if a school board member or a school officer said that school police target minority students, is that defamatory? Should they be fired for that? Because that happened here. Should they be fired for that?
A school employee, well, whether
Yep.
were they speaking as a private citizen?
They
or
didn't
within
clarify.
the scope of their employment?
They didn't clarify. So should that
No,
person,
but this
and we had
doesn't
that
say-
policy, so now I'm curious, this is the policy that we currently have.
Well, you're.
Did they go against
this
the policy?
This provides guidance. This isn't you do this and you're disciplined, or you do this and you're in violation of the policy, or you're in violation of the
But
law.
I'm trying to understand, we just gave a real world experience where we said school safety, and I gave a real case example where we had people that worked in
Out of
their school district
context,
here
and
that came
there's-
to a school board meeting and said that school police officers target minority students. Now, who is the arbiter of if that statement was true or false, and who would be the
Well,
arbiter
you don't
to
get
make?
to true
Yeah.
or false there. That's a matter of public concern. They're entitled to
Voice an opinion.
voice an opinion on that matter of public concern. If they come to a podium at a public board meeting, presumably they're speaking as a private citizen because they're not doing it in the school building to their class, or that is a
They go on
forum-
social media and do it.
I think it's
s-
important.
private
that-
social media,
Sure.
social.
Private social media.
Then you're going to have to apply this analysis.
Why?
But I think
Why?
Yes.
Because
Why would
they
we
ha-
tell our teachers they can't go on social media?
I'm
and they
sorry, no.
and they can't.
The analysis I'm talking about
Yeah, yeah.
is the Pickering analysis. To determine whether or not they're speaking as if they're on a private website, their own personal website, they're speaking as a private citizen. Then you have to consider whether or not it's a matter of public importance. If so, the First Amendment free speech protection applies, and then you do the analysis as to whether or not it caused or or is reasonably likely to cause substantial disruption to the district's operations. And you apply that test.
So I guess in that scenario, Dr. Kemp, just give me 1 second. In that scenario, if that was a call to action or a raising of an accusation, they're purporting that that's happening, wouldn't then the next step be an investigation to whether or not there was any truth to that statement by administration or whoever the offending individual was? Based on school code?
There would be some analysis of the situation and the circumstances.
And then there would be a determination as to whether or not it rose to the level of.
The purpose of allowing a public employee to address a matter of public employee importance as a private citizen is to
But it must be
prompt
balanced against
action,
the interests of the
you know?
district. What if that's what it says, that the issues are related to the school district and its programs. The employee's freedom of expression must be balanced against the interests of the district. In layman's terms, that says that your freedom of expression, you need to balance it about what's the best interest in the district that you work for. That's taking.
That's not.
What does that mean?
Where does
It
it say
says that when those issues are related to the school district and its programs, the employee's freedom of expression must be balanced against the interest of the district.
Good.
Now, It doesn't say that in the PSBA one. It says it in ours. What does that mean to you then? To me, that means you have to curtail your freedom of speech because it might not be in the interest of the district that you work for.
I think that's referring to what I'm saying. It's saying that must balance the employee's interest regarding freedom of expression on issues of public concern as a private citizen against the interest of the district in promoting an efficient operation. That is the test.
Dr. Camper, go ahead.
So I think a lot of this is you're trying to boil it down to a one incident thing without looking at the totality of a situation that would require a lot of investigation, looking at the severity of how much did this impact things overall. If somebody made a private post on a private Facebook page and it was their own page, it was kept private, the only people who technically could see it is the people who were friends, but then somebody screenshots. I mean, those things happen, and that needs to be considered. But if you're talking about someone who is posting things again and again and again in a public forum, and it becomes very obvious that there is an intent for harm, then through an investigation, you can see that there is a very targeted reasoning and rationale for these comments and for these posts to cause a disinterest of what the district is for the good of the district. Then that's when this type of policy is good. If you work for, say, Tylenol, and you're an employee of Tylenol, and you're going on and you're walking around with billboards saying Tylenol sucks and you shouldn't take Tylenol and this and that and the other thing, you think Tylenol is going to keep you as an employee? Absolutely not.
Yeah, but Tylenol is a private entity.
I understand, but I'm saying like
you could go to your district and complain.
Tylenol's gonna have a rough week coming up anyway.
You know what your district's doing.
Bad
No,
example,
but I mean.
But it's
You
the
have to be
idea.
very careful there when you're offering criticism of. This isn't saying that they can't offer criticisms of district operations.
This is why this policy is
Agreed,
dangerous.
but at the same time, if there's a marked attempt to bring down, say they don't like their supervisor, and they're making all of these false claims, and there's a very marked intent, that's where this policy comes into play.
Yeah, but that's not public concern.
That could be.
But that is becomes
it
public
could potentially be public concern, but that's where you get into you can't make defamatory statements. Or
Right.
defamatory
That's where I
statements
feel
aren't
like some of
protected
this stuff.
speech.
I think it comes to the situation, and you have to look at each situation individually. Having some guidelines gives some protection to individuals so that they kind of think a little bit more before they go out there and they just start saying anything without thought. Because we live in a day and age where you just can't go act any way you want and not have repercussions. You saw the Phillies game. I mean, you just can't act certain ways. It's going to come back and haunt you.
And I mean, as far as number one, Mr. Saylor and
You stole that kid's
Mr.
ball.
Keenan, that's just something that, I mean, those are recommendations that are made to employees in regard to their use of social media and on private social media, to say clearly, to make sure it's clear to the public that they're not speaking
I get
as a
it, but
public employee.
like, look at the differential. PSBA says the public school employees do not surrender their right to free speech merely because of their status as an employee of the school district. I like that statement. It's factual. It lets the teacher know they're not surrendering their rights. Look what we have. You're going to have to balance the freedom of your expression against what's the better interest of the district. Those are night and day statements. For the non-lawyer, those are night and day statements.
And I don't, in my opinion, they're both consistent with the law. And they're not contradictory.
There's a lot of things consistent in the law that don't make it right, but they
Well,
are.
I'm just.
But
well,
they
yeah,
are.
but
They are contradictory.
My opinion is what is legal and what is not. And I don't believe that those two statements are necessarily contradictory, because I think the second statement does articulate what the balancing test is.
As policy writers, I'm sorry, Mr. McKinney, go ahead.
Well, no, I guess as I think about this, and we're talking about what is the obligation to our community as a living, learning organism that protects folks from harm. So a teacher can say something that may be their opinion and they truly believe is true that harms students, faculty, staff. Like, so let's say a staff member or faculty member says, I believe a certain race is inferior to another race. And you know you have to go into that classroom.
Right.
Like, that's a concern to me.
Well, and that could potentially be actionable because it's a statement like that would be reasonably likely to cause substantial disruption to the district's educational program and most likely would in fact cause substantial disruption to the district's educational program. So
That also violates federal laws and titles.
that kind of statement, that
Yeah.
statement?
That specific statement, as stated by a teacher, would violate multiple laws, discriminatory laws. I'm not going there. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about issues of public concern. That's what this is about. What you said, if that teacher did that in the classroom or stated that,
No, not in a classroom. I'm saying in
Correct.
their personal, private expression of themselves.
Correct, but
They
that
make
would,
those statements or whatever, not in the classroom, not saying as a teacher, saying as a private individual, I believe this to be the fact.
And that's when you apply that balancing test.
It could be determined that that would impede their performance in their duties.
correct, because they're making a discriminatory statement about
They
the
bring
student
that
body.
bias with them anywhere,
Correct,
and
yes.
they're
And
not
we
going to
have
be able to do their job.
19 other policies and they're federal laws that
That's the balancing
Correct,
act.
yeah.
There is that balancing act. It is actual. It is real. It is in place right now, whether we say it or not.
So as I read this, and I mentioned this during policy committee, the way that my interpretation of the addition, the school district's addition, not PSBA's addition, is to signal a certain level of professionalism and decorum that is expected on behalf of the school district for all employees of this school district. It's a signal to that. Now, I don't personally have any issue adding the stricken part back with regard to the board respects employees' freedom of speech. Obviously, we acknowledge that. Public school employees do not surrender their right to freedom of speech just because their status of employee of a school district. However, I do feel very strongly that as a board, we should hold our administrators and our faculty and our staff to a certain level of, again, professionalism and decorum within our buildings and in our community. And so that's why I feel like the addition is important, while still acknowledging freedom of speech. We all have free will. You can make a choice to say something or not say something. Saying something with the specific reason just because you can and it's freedom of speech with the intention of provoking, to me, is not someone who is a leader in a building.
So a teacher goes on or a principal goes on and says the president's equated to a potato head.
Is that a hypothetical situation, Mr. Saylor?
No, it's real world.
It's real world?
Yeah.
Okay, you want to talk about that now in 2025?
Yeah, I'm just curious if a teacher went online and said.
Reason that this policy exists
Yeah.
directly points to your example, and this is to signal to our faculty and staff that as a school district, our employees are held to a higher standard.
So if a principal went online and said that President Trump is that President Trump is as dumb as Mr. Potato Head, would they get in trouble?
Does their Facebook private page say that their opinion is theirs and theirs alone?
No.
Again, this policy would indicate that in the best interest of that employee, they should put that on their page. And board members have had that on their page, and other employees have had that on their page. You're making a choice to clarify
I think
that
you've
you're
been
speaking
down
for
this road
yourself.
before. You've lost the lawsuits on this road before. And now that I know the intent of what this policy and that statement means, it is disingenuous and it is dangerous for this board to pass this policy.
One clarification is the district did not lose any lawsuits regarding this issue. District did not lose a lawsuit. They settled a case without any
We're talking
admission.
a hypothetical. What case are you talking
Well,
about?
you just
Yeah.
said that the district has lost cases before. I just
And you
wanted
also
to
said that it wasn't
clarify.
hypothetical,
We're now
Mr.
telling
Saylor.
teachers how they should be acting outside their lives. and what they should be posting on social media.
And I'm,
And your compelling speech.
No, I'm very.
Your compelling speech. You're saying you're going to have on your social media account. You have to
should.
state clearly
I didn't say
that their expression represents their personal views, and that their social media should be private, not public.
It's not a requirement. It's
But
just.
Mr. Keenan,
it's
if they
just
don't, then they could land in HR heaven,
But
where
they-
there are violations of these guidelines, violation of the guidelines. They're not suggestions, because if you violate the guideline,
Just a
if you
second.
don't do number
I'm
one,
not defending it. I mean, I already said my piece. If you heard it,
Well, the other board
it's a
members weren't
fact.
there.
It's a fact that political entities such as the school board, borough, township, sewer authority, they can pass illegal policies and regulations, and as long as they are not enforced illegally, nothing bad happens. So I already determined that they can't do what they're saying that they can do, and it's not committing them to that. It's just threatening them for
Does
something
this-
that they're not allowed to threaten.
does this free speech go with what they put in their classroom?
No, we control what expression in the.
That was a secondary conversation we were having.
To the
in-
extent that they're allowed under law to control.
Correct.
They control.
So this was a secondary conversation that we have. So since we're going to censor how our teachers behave in the real world, my secondary question would be about policy 321, which is what we brought up. Are teachers permitted to put political signs in their classrooms, like have a QR code to moveon.org, so the students can go by the classroom and click the QR code, and then they could go to a website that lets them know that they could sign up to be an activist for the Democratic Party? Because that currently happens in our school, and the signs are still there. They've been there for years, but is that not allowed?
If it's partisan political activity, which what you're referencing sounds like it would be, I would opine that the district could direct a teacher to remove that expression, that speech, whatever it is, because it's in the classroom. No, the teacher cannot engage in partisan political activity in school, and in particular in their classrooms.
So that would be with regards to political activities 321.
Correct.
So I realize there's overlap between the freedom of speech piece of things, but if we could wrap up 320. Mr. Saylor, what would you suggest this policy state, in what way, and with what contents? And that way the committee can have a conversation based on what you would be acceptable to you.
I would have to go back to the PNN and contact PSBA and talk to the legal liaison on what their thought processes was when they redid policy 320.
Would you like to bring new language next month to the committee then for review?
No, I don't. I've been told board members shouldn't write policy. So, I mean, I could talk to the legal liaison, or I would just pass what PSBA put out. Like, if we just had that policy, I'd vote for that.
I do
May I
know
interject?
that there are other districts that have very similar policies in place. And not being on the policy committee, has the district looked at what the wording or the guidelines are from other districts? Because I know for a fact that there are other districts that have very strict policies about what is said and the decorum and professionalism of how you act outside of the school
And
in
I
your
just-
professional or
Right.
in your personal life can get you in trouble professionally.
Every district has some type of policy.
But I
on
mean,
this.
like with guidelines, I'm just
And
curious.
I just want to be clear that the expression on page 2, these guidelines, Mr. Saylor, if you violate these guidelines, the district is still going to be required to apply the rest of the First Amendment free speech analysis. These guidelines in and of themselves are not determinative of whether or not a matter is protected by free speech. It says that there are circumstances that would be
Yeah, I know,
taken into
but there's
consideration.
a big differential in the PNN that PSBA has. They allocate a lot more legal references. They specifically allocate Pickering and other references in theirs. We do not. So to Ms. White's question, I would, and you shouldn't just go what I want, because it's probably going to be an 8-1 vote anyway.
Well,
Or, excuse me,
I
but
say
yeah.
that because I'm really curious as
I
to
like
what would,
PNN, I like theirs. I like their
with
their
only
very
their
basic.
language with no additions.
I like, because it's very vague there, correct. It doesn't have these stipulated guidelines, and it states that it respects the teachers.
Back to the
free
embracing of the
speech.
vagueness.
For this one too, yeah.
Okay.
It's amazing.
May I?
I'm sorry, Mr. Leggett.
Thank you. I know I normally jump in a little earlier on these things, but 3 weeks ago, I was in a meeting in Norristown for the MCIU, and we adopted a policy for first read, policy 320, which is essentially what we're dealing with here. The policy that we passed at MCIU maintains the preamble language that is being stricken in the policy that we have here. So it has the board respects the employees' freedom of speech, public school employees do not surrender their free speech, etc. language as being maintained. Adding the similar language about the board adopts this policy and the in situations paragraph there. It also indicates not suggestions for what a person should do as far as stating that they're, this is only their opinion. But what it does is it applies a measure of how it affects things. So if the speech in question impairs discipline by superiors or harmony among coworkers, or it has a detrimental impact on close working relationships. So that there's 4 different things there. And this is part of public record policy 320 in the MCIU. And I would just submit that forward as some sort of a suggestion for where we are, because it does maintain a lot of the previous language without so much of the restrictions. Because, all our employees should realize that if they're discussing a cupcake recipe, that they shouldn't have to state that they're doing this not as an employee of the district. That content is very obviously has nothing to do with the school. Are there cases where a person's speech is going to cross into the line? Obviously. It's going to happen when you talk about national politics, state politics, or whatever. But the employee's freedom of speech and expression still is there. And we need to make sure that everybody, the employee especially, is aware, and the district is aware of where some of these lines might be when they get crossed. I guess this is a topic that I would have preferred to have come into knowing that we're going to have this discussion with this being bounced to the full board, which obviously we cannot act on this at this point. This is only a discussion because it's not a part of the agenda and we really can't deal with this policy yet. I think we should take the rest of this month to look at what it is that we're doing and be intentional about how this policy ends up, realizing that what we're dealing with is the rights of our employees, their First Amendment rights, which I'm not one to try to limit somebody's First Amendment rights. I think it then bears on the district to be clear in where our expectations are on that. And like I said, I think this takes a nuanced look, and it's going to take some time, and I think it's going to take some back and forth. So I appreciate the discussion that we were able to have here tonight, and let's do our research, and if it's okay, I mean, you can look at the MCIU policy yourself. I don't need to forward that to you. But let's do that. Let's take a look at this. Let's figure out how we're going to do it. This is an important debate for all the reasons that we as a educational institution need to set an example for our public and our students in how we deal with constitutional rights.
Thank you, Mr. Liggett. I don't disagree at all. I do think that it is important that, especially given the topic we open it to a wider group of input and have a consensus of the true full board rather than just the small policy committee. So if it's amenable, we can put this, can hold it, and we'll move it for next month, and we can keep it as part of governance, if that's all right. Would that be acceptable? Rather than discuss this one at policy, we can just bring it back to the whole board? Does that, does anyone have any issue with that? Okay, that's the will of the board. So then, I guess.
Question?
Go ahead.
Would that be during the working session or during the business section? And is the intent of that to forward a policy to first reading?
So it was on the agenda as part of the review cycle. And so had anyone had any issue with it, had anyone not had any issue with it, it would have gone to first read. That's correct.
It would gone to first read next month, correct?
Correct. So now we're just going to revisit as it's presented next month during governance as part of the agenda. Do you have an issue with that, Mr. Leggett?
During the working session?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just trying to
Yep.
get
And
some
then
clarity
if there
on this.
if there's discussion to happen or revisions to happen, then it would follow the same course, but not during policy committee, if that's the will of the board. Is the consensus of the board that there is any issue with that? For policy 320? Because I know you'd like to weigh in, Mr. Leggett, and you won't be there at policy
We
next
really
month.
can't, because it was not on the agenda for us. We didn't give public comment for it, so.
I understand.
You can move it to the
It
work
will be
session.
on.
Yeah,
It will be on the agenda next month.
yeah.
I'm asking if that's okay with as a consensus.
That's
Does
where I
anyone
think-
have issue with that?
That's where I think Bob and I have just frankly worried just having that conversation, because it's not on the agenda for tonight. We didn't suspend and offer public comment, so we're not supposed to be making decisions on something.
We're not
that's-
making a decision on it.
Or you're asking us to make a decision if it's okay to put it in an agenda or leave it in policy. That's a decision.
Okay.
Might I, not to be a stickler on certain things.
Yeah,
I
Bob,
know I
it's
am.
8:17,
No,
so we got
I
all
know,
night. Go ahead.
No, I know. I have typically and have almost universally said that policy is supposed to filter through the policy committee
Okay,
before
so
it
we'll
goes
hold
to.
it in policy
And
committee.
I'm just, and not.
No,
I'm not.
it's good. You're right.
I'm
We've had
just
this
trying to
conversation.
remain consistent.
Absolutely. So we'll move it back to policy, and anyone on the board at large would like to weigh in, please forward your comments to the policy committee, and the revisions will be incorporated. And we'll discuss it during policy next month.
Well, if you want to have the discussion though during the board meeting, during governance, we could put this up to first reading. And I would not object to that as a part of the policy committee.
I
If we wanna
don't
have that
personally have an
larger
issue with
discussion.
either modality.
Either way is fine with me.
Okay. I'm fine with that too. So we will put it on the policy agenda for next month. We'll see if it makes it to first reading. If not, we'll just go through the motions again. Do we want to have a deeper conversation about 321? I know we touched on it briefly.
What was the concern that was brought up with 321?
Political materials in classrooms and instructing students on how to vote.
We didn't actually talk about that in policy.
It was a comment made.
Yeah, I just mentioned, I was just asking where that would fit in and how it would be addressed.
Yeah. Oh, that was your question. Your question was, what do you do if a teacher tells a student who to vote for? Yeah. And we were told you were going to answer it.
That would be a matter subject to discipline. I mean, I would consider that, it would be in violation of the policy.
So that currently happens now, because as I mentioned before, there are teachers with QR codes to moveon.org, which tells their students how to vote.
Those
Actually, specifically, one of the sites directs them how to vote in Pennsylvania, whether they should retain judges or not retain judges and other Pennsylvania issues for
if
the upcoming
it's-
election in
if
November.
It's telling them
Yeah.
to vote for judges and that judges are on the ballot, that's one thing. If
No,
it's
specific.
Telling them specific, no,
Yeah.
that should not be the case.
I knew they couldn't do that. Darn it.
The thing that's interesting, Mr. Saylor, is it goes both ways, because my kids have experienced that in the classroom here, so.
Shouldn't have happened.
Right, it shouldn't have happened, so stop using like this one, like, example. Like it's something that should not happen, and we should state that.
What example?
Maybe we're talking about your kids, and we
Yeah.
want to protect them. We're talking about all kids.
What example?
Exactly.
I'm talking about an example that's happening today, that happened today in the school.
Yes, but let's say nobody should be doing it, but you're
The
not
point
saying.
is, you don't
So-
need to point out which party it was.
Well,
We
that's,
don't need to make it political
Is.
and bring up
no.
parties.
What makes it political is it's been asked to be removed, and it just doesn't get removed.
Again, you don't need to mention which party.
I think, I'll follow up with the recommendation that we need to follow the chain of a command. If your child or a student is experiencing something like that, it needs to be reported to the teacher. A parent needs to have a conversation with the teacher, and if they're unsuccessful in getting the teacher to uphold the policy for whatever reason, they need to reach out to the administrator. If administration doesn't know this is happening, they can't respond to it. I don't know if those of us around the table are aware of this, and administration is also aware of it. It hasn't been reported to me. Whether it's been reported to our administrators or teachers is also something I'm not certain of. But again, it needs to be reported. There needs to be a conversation with the teachers or the administrators.
If administrators walk the building, they would see the signs. They're on the doors.
Okay,
They're on the windows.
so I'll follow up on that then,
And
if they are
quite,
that obvious.
quite frankly, I'm not sure I see that this is what Move On necessarily does. It talks about, discussion and study of politics and political issues when appropriate to classroom studies. When I have looked at Move On and organizations like Move On, they provide information on issues, they provide information on candidates. They do from a point of view. But, as we've been talking, we shouldn't be stifling anybody's point of view.
MoveOn.org. Don't mess with Texas. Texas House Democrats
Can
are
you
taking
let
a
me
bold
finish?
stand for fair representation. Now it's our time to take their back.
Mr. Saylor.
That's specifically what it says.
For 2 years, I sat in the audience here, and my speaking was limited to 3 minutes at the beginning of the meeting and at the end of the meeting. Now I've got a seat at the table. I will speak until I'm done. I do not want to be interrupted. I will tell you when I'm done speaking, okay? That's expressing a point of view. Something like that is expressing a point of view. That is not anything that's forcing anybody to do anything other than consider a point of view. There are sources for alternate points of view that are freely available, and it's all part of the discussion of politics, which is something, all of this are things that affect everybody's daily lives. These kids are going to be citizens soon. They deserve to have a full discussion, and things like that, they may be partisan, but they're part of the discussion, and there's other sources of material available as well. I grew up in a different time. When I was in junior high and high school, teachers did have political posters in their classrooms. Teachers would wear campaign buttons. You knew generally where people stood. They would engage in conversation. Nobody was saying, if you don't vote for Nixon or if you don't vote for Ford, you're going to fail my class. People would say, if they wouldn't make a secret of it. And I don't think any of us felt like we were being indoctrinated in any way, shape, or form. If you look at my class now, we're a pretty even mix of, we go across the political spectrum. So I don't think anybody was inappropriately indoctrinated in any way. I don't see any problem. Maybe I'm a minority opinion here, but I think limiting political discussion and political speech, I think that's a problem that needs to be addressed. As far as just putting up a QR code for Move On, that's a source of information, just like anything else. And I don't think that in and of itself is directing anybody or indoctrinating anybody. It's providing information. I'm done.
Mr. Subers, does that violate policy 321?
would be my opinion that promoting any specific political party or political candidates would be in violation of policy 321.
Got it.
So what is, what I'm reading,
So, oh, I apologize, I wasn't done. So for promoting something that has the students go to, won't back down, F around, and flip the house. Now, I didn't say the actual word. That would be considered against the policy, right?
Is it
'Cause-
supporting one party? Sorry, I just wanted clarification.
I don't know what party Elizabeth Warren belongs to with all these oh, they're all Democrats, yes.
Okay.
Yes. F around and flip the house. That's what we have.
Mr. Saylor, could I ask for clarification?
Yeah.
Is that in our schools somewhere?
Yeah, if you click on the QR codes, and if you go to the website, yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so the QR code that,
Takes you to the
okay,
website, sure.
understood, thank you.
Yeah.
okay, so as I'm reading the guidelines, no employee shall engage in political activities during assigned hours on school property under the jurisdiction of the board. Is having a QR code on the wall representative of an employee engaging in political activities?
Right now, there's no doubt, it's not defined in policy. In our response to the questions on this policy, we suggested the incorporation of certain language that would be more specific. It was based on a particular court case, and it indicated that items that would be considered political activities would be distribution of campaign materials, display of campaign materials, performing campaign-related chores, wear, display partisan political buttons, T-shirts, signs, etc., making political contributions, posting a comment to a blog or social media that advocates for a political party, those types of things. So I think that the intent is to avoid campaigning in the classroom. And this is and again, this is in-class speech. It's not
Okay.
instructional environment.
So collection of and/or solicitation of campaign funds for campaign workers is prohibited. Would putting up a QR code on the bulletin board fall under that category?
Does it lead to a website where you can donate to a specific cause or political party?
If I'm just putting up if somebody's just putting up the QR code, are they the ones who are doing the collecting?
I'm looking at the website right now. I'm just here to provide context. I'm on the Move On website right now. I don't know where the QR code leads. It may just lead to the front page. It may lead to a specific page. There is a donate button on the front page. That's just providing context.
So that's move on, but that's not that's not the district employee that may or may not have put up the QR code. Use of students or staff for writing, addressing, or distributing partisan political materials is forbidden.
Oh, I'm sorry. What does putting up that QR code do then?
It's a source of information.
Oh, so it is something, and you are thinking of it as something that is good to get out there, right? Because you just said that more political information and addressing more political issues was important to do that to your students, and you don't see the harm in that, and yet you're saying it's not the exact thing that you were just supporting, of which it is, and we can all see it is. So where are you getting off doing this? Like, where are you coming from? You know, you're saying it's not what it is. How does that work? How do you sit here in front of us and do that?
I'm not following what you're saying, that I'm saying it's not what it is.
You are saying it is a
source
political publication
It's
that
a
is
source.
being made by the teacher, and that it is
Teacher didn't
connected
make it.
to a political party,
The
and that there are donations there, but because our human eyes cannot read the QR code, it is not what it is. So therefore, don't look at it and don't see it. That's what you're saying right now. It's absolutely ridiculous.
The teacher didn't make that.
Are
make
you
that
in
information.
kindergarten? I mean, what are you doing?
I am not even following your argument, Mr. Keenan.
So I just want to interject a moment. My thought process on this is one, we would need to first find out. Again, we're taking an example of something that just got thrown at us, like we found this today. I feel like it's something that should have been taken to the principal and said, hey, this was found today, so that the principal could investigate to see, one, who posted it, where did it come from, make sure it was taken down. That's number one. Number two, when we're looking at these things, we're jumping to it's posted everywhere. We're getting these things out of context. I have no idea whether that's one QR code on one bulletin board, whether this is something that's on 20 bulletin boards. I think we are making this into something way more than it needs to be. I think this is something that can be handled at the building level with the principal and can be followed up on. Do I agree that there should be advertisements about how to campaign? No. Do I think that in your history classes, when there's elections, they should be having conversations about the parties and who's running, and that be part of what they're learning about? Absolutely, because these kids are getting ready to turn 18 and they're going to be voting, and they need to understand what politics are and what it looks like. We're at a high school level. It's very different. So we have to be careful with, parsing things out. And we're not going to be able to sit here and argue about it at this table over one little incident when we don't have all the details. We don't know how many of these things are around. We don't know if there's any that are out there for the flip side. There could be 50 of them for the Republicans and 50 of them for the Democrats. And quite frankly, I don't care whether it's Republican or Democrat. This is not the place for it. This is a public school. I don't care whether you're an R or a D. Leave it at home. We're here to talk about kids and their education. I'm done with it. Stop trying to bring it here and create arguments. Just leave it.
I'm just kind of curious of those who know about these QR codes or advertisements, whatever. When were you made aware of this?
You talking to me?
Anyone, if anyone knows of when these things were?
August 19th.
Okay. And August 19th, so what did you do in the time between August 19th and now?
Called the superintendent on August 19th.
And was it not met to your satisfaction?
Was what not met to my satisfaction?
Whatever you hope to have happen when you reported it.
Oh, no. We were talking about this policy, so I just asked a question and I brought
I'm
up
talking
a
about the
real
QR code thing. I'm talking about the thing you specifically mentioned about what you're having a concern about.
Sit down.
No.
Well, but what have you done since you found out about it?
I told the superintendent on August 19th.
So the QR code was up on August 19th?
Yeah.
And you told Dr. Russell on August 19th, there's this QR code.
I told her that there were signs about MoveOn.org in the classroom, that a ninth grader saw the signs during initiation day, whatever it's called. Yeah, correct.
And
I
you
did
told
my
her-
job.
You
A
told her
parent
the
came to-
classroom number and is this accurate?
No, I didn't say that. I said I alerted the superintendent on August 19th.
So wait, you didn't see it. A parent alerted you. So
No, I saw it. The student told the parent told me and showed me, and I sent a note to the superintendent letting them know.
So I just want to go back to board etiquette and what we were told from day one. If a parent comes to any one of us and makes a complaint, it is our job to alert them to the chain of command. Your job as a board member
To tell them to
was
talk to the
to
principal.
tell them to talk to the principal and then to keep your nose out of it.
And that's what I did, and I alerted the superintendent. When I have a conversation with a parent, I let the superintendent know. And I've been doing that for 4 years, as she can attest.
I just find it interesting that you come to these meetings with this.
No, this
with
came
it-
up because
with
we
an
were talking
example
policy
today,
321.
And you say, oh, it was there today.
Because
and
it's
you
still
drop,
there.
You drop it here so
No,
that it
this came
creates
up because we
this
were
big
talking about the
fury.
policy. I had no intent to bring this
No,
up today.
I-
We were talking about the policy.
I highly suspect that there's a lot of trying to just tweak and add fuel to the fire. I think
Dr.
a
Russell,
lot
did
of
I
this
let you
could-
know on August 19th when I found out?
You did let me know on August 19th, or I can't verify the date, but it sounds about right. And my response was essentially what you just said, Dr.
Correct.
Campley, that without having more details, I don't do anything about that. What I need for Mr. Saylor to do is to go back to the parent and recommend the parent have a conversation with the teacher, and if that's unsuccessful, have a conversation with the administrator. Follow the chain of command. That's what I shared with Mr. Saylor.
So do you know if the chain of command has been followed since then?
I recommended the same thing to the parent.
Exactly, and if the parent did not follow the chain of command and you don't know what those conversations were had with Dr. Fuller, then we could be sitting here, who knows what's happened since
You
then.
know how difficult it is, and I said this for 4 years, that parents don't want to have conversations with teachers that they might feel might alienate their child.
But that is not
Imagine
your
having
job
to-
as a board
and
member.
It is. It's my job to advocate for the people who
It
are
is
not
not
being
your
listened
job
to
to
in our school
overstep.
district. And I didn't overstep. I alerted the superintendent. Mr. Keenan, my son is in your classroom, and you happen to have something that you hanged up in your room that my family finds to be questioning and offensive. That's a difficult conversation to a parent to have, especially in today's environment. That's why they have the ability to talk to a board member who can pass on that information. What happens once that information is passed on is none of my business. But we just happen to have a policy about 321, and so I asked a question, is it appropriate to have these things hung up in the school? The answer is no. One way to get these things removed from the school is when you're walking around the building and you see it on the door, because it's on a door, it's on a piece of glass that you look into the classroom, you take a little ice scraper and you scrape said sign sticker off the door. That's simple. And if you want, I could come into the school tomorrow and do it.
1,000 kids and sitting there going, oh, I see a QR code. Let me check and see what that is. When you are trusting your faculty, unless the principal is alerted specifically to say, this is a concern, he will not know to handle it. You did not go speak to the principals, and you said you saw it. You went to the superintendent, who came back to you specifically and said you need to follow the chain of command and talk to the teacher and the principal. You didn't do it, and assuming the parent didn't do it, and then you're going to sit here and complain about it.
When I did it, it was corrected. And I did it exactly that way. I didn't know actually about the policy. But I went to the teacher and I went to the principal. And it was dealt with. So,
As an advocate, as a parent.
as a parent.
Understood.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it would be difficult for somebody to do it. It seemed like the only thing I could do, was to bring it up.
See, now, thank you, Mr. Keenan, because, I mean, that makes sense, but it seems like there's this, gotcha moment all the time, on this board, and it's just ridiculous.
I didn't, this was more than a year ago.
But you did the right thing. But you did the right thing. You corrected a situation that you thought there was something egregious happening in the school.
It worked out.
Okay.
And if it hadn't worked out to your satisfaction, you would have
We
escalated
might
it.
have, yeah,
Okay.
as a parent.
Yeah, so we've just spent all this time talking about something because, again, it comes off as disingenuous to be like, oh, all this stuff's happening in school where we're not doing
Still
anything.
feel
about it.
bad for the parent if they are too afraid to do something. But either way, no, I'm not being argumentative. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be.
Well, but the thing about it is, if you choose not to do something, but you want correction to it, then you have no one to blame but yourself. And the thing about it is, and I will speak as a parent who, is a person of color or whatever, we do not have that same license that most folks in the society have. When I hear Mr. Saylor say, oh, they're afraid of retaliation or whatever, I can guarantee you families of color, they're looking out for their kids or whatever, but they build resilience into it because they know they might not get anything done. So again, I think it's funny that and again, Mr. Saylor, and correct me if I'm wrong, you said, I look out for parents who come to me who do. Why aren't we looking out for all kids? If you were to hear this about something else, let's say there was a conservative QR code, would you have been as diligent?
Yes, I've asked
Thank you.
multiple times to remove all politics from the school building. And you know this, Mr. McKinney. And again, I'll reiterate, the only reason I brought this up was because we're talking about the policy. If we weren't talking about policy 321, you can shake your head, I don't care. If you weren't talking about policy 321, I wouldn't have brought it up in public at all, because it's not for me to bring up. I brought it to the attention of the board president and superintendent, because that's what I do when someone reaches out to me. I told the parents to go out and talk to the principal, or talk to the teacher and the principal. That's how you do it.
So, Mr. Saylor, may I
Now,
ask?
the only reason I brought it up because we were specifically talking what is in a political activities for policy 321. If policy 321 wasn't on the agenda, Mr. McKinney, you wouldn't hear about this issue.
So, May I?
See, that's the problem, because if it's an issue or concern, why aren't we hearing about it when you know about it? Like, that's the thing about it. Like, so when you're saying,
I alerted the board president and the superintendent. I'm not sending a full email to the board letting them know that there's this and that hanging up in the school district. That's not my job.
So, but just to be clear,
Yeah.
I'm copied because that's board protocol. I was never going to respond or answer you
Of course.
with regards to that. Dr. Russell did address it
Yeah.
back to you.
Yes.
And so I hear what you're saying about, and you've said it many times, about how you are the speaking point for parents who feel as though they do not have a voice. You are also a parent in this high school, and you saw this with your own eyes. Are you offended by this material hanging up?
My personal opinion about materials is
No, no, no.
differential to me as a board member.
Separate from a board member, as a fellow parent with another parent coming to you, are you as a parent offended by this material hanging up?
I separate as a parent to Ethan and my board member
I'm not talking about a
responsibilities.
board member responsibility. I'm
I
talking
don't
about
believe
you
anything
walking.
politics should be in a school building.
Okay,
Correct.
so you saw this hanging up with your own eyes
Mhm.
as a parent, and that's your personal belief.
My personal belief is I don't want any of it in the building.
Fine.
Correct.
So then why did you not take chain of command to point it out? Even though it was not, you're not the one that found it.
Correct.
Why did you not, as a parent who has the belief that none of it belongs in the building? I haven't seen it. I've seen other things hanging, and I've seen Socialist AP Gov has both party old campaign signs hanging up. It's part of the decoration of the room because
Yeah,
that's what they're studying,
correct.
right? So, and I don't know where this particular QR code is, but if you were alerted to it as a parent, a friend, and you saw it with your own eyes, and you feel as egregious, like Mr. Keenan pointed out, he saw something that he didn't feel was right, and then he took it to the teacher, why did you not do that as someone who believes?
I'm a board member. I'm not emailing a principal about an issue that's not directly related to my child. If there's an issue that's about policy, I alert the superintendent and I tell the parents.
I'm not talking about
and
as
I
a
tell
board
the
member.
parents and I tell the parents this is what you should do.
But I'm not talking about as a board member. I'm talking about as a parent who saw it in your child's building.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether or not
I've
Ethan
never
told you.
once sent an email to anyone that's related to Ethan as a parent since I've been elected to the board. My wife handles all that. I don't get involved with my son's education here at PV because I'm a board member. So I would never send an email to a principal about something that's not related to my child.
That's a remarkable privilege because let me tell you, if I did not email on behalf of my child, who exactly would advocate for my child?
My wife.
Your wife would advocate for my child?
She advocates for my child.
And when there is an absence of the privilege of having someone else to advocate for your child, that's absurd. So you're saying that as a board member, you feel as though it's not your place to advocate for your child?
No, I don't intervene. I don't cross realms. Correct. Why are we talking about how I parent?
Because I'm asking you, if you saw it as a parent in this building, as a tax-paying parent,
Yeah.
why did you not escalate it to the point of chain of command? Why would you have you took it as a board member to
Not
Dr.
in that
Russell.
class.
That's irrelevant. You saw it with your own eyes. Why would you, as a board member, you emailed Dr. Russell and copied me?
Yeah.
As a parent, why would you not email the principal?
I have never emailed a principal in this high school
Okay, so that's the answer.
or in this school district since I've been elected to the school
That's
board.
the answer then.
About an
Dr.
issue.
Russell, I apologize because, man, you and I have had many conversations
seriously,
about
I
my children.
apologize too.
And Dr. Fuller, man,
Ditto.
you got lots
I
of-
am so sorry. You too, Mr. Handerhan. I'm so sorry. Yep.
I email on the daily about all my kids, and I meet with the teachers all the time because, first and foremost, I'm a parent, and then I'm a board member. Sorry.
So, with regard to this one, do you want to bring this one back to policy as well and handle it in the same manner as 320? Okay, that's what we'll do. So that closes governance, unless someone has anything else to add. And I open the floor for section 10, which is 10.01, comments from the audience. Board affords the public the opportunity to comment on any topic for 3 minutes. Nothing? Cool. 10.02, I open the table for comments from board members. Okay. 10.03, notice video disclaimer. 10.04 is adjournment. We did not have an executive session tonight. Thank you so much. We will see you at committee meetings for the rest of the month, and we will see you here at this table next month. Thank you.
So I can work on Drive. There might have been there's something still going on. When I click download, it's not downloading to my Drive. Again, on this device, I'll check it at my home device, just to see. But I can do the print though, so I can work on this. But then I can upload it. So I can do that, but it's a workaround. It's not. It's not. I click the download, nothing happens. No, it doesn't download on this. So I go, the PDF comes up, I click the download.
Yeah, that's 2 steps. You don't have to do it's not efficient, right? Like, you gotta download it somewhere and then upload it somewhere.
Right.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, so it's not as useless as, or it wasn't useless, but the problem,
Well, that's not where we want to be.
that button
We
is
want
not
to be,
working.
exactly, we want to be, when you click download.
The download, I can't download directly from anything onto that.
Look at your settings, on your user settings to make sure that you're on the right.
Sure.
Yeah, it's all.
I think most of us but most of us all I don't want to jinx it, but most of us said the same thing. Keep politics out of the school. And, and I think that was, very encouraging to hear from everybody. Dinner. And, yeah, I don't want to tell people, teach people's kids in school what they should believe.